Hey everybody, I am here with Brennan Rooks of Doodle. Brennan, how's it going this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'd love to just start with a little bit about yourself and the agency.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm a creative professional at heart. I mean, there's so many ways to describe it. And I've been in the space for over a decade now. And I feel like every 6 months I have to change the way I describe it. So I'm kind of chalked it up to designer most of the time. Sometimes I just say creative professional because I'm kind of a jack of all trades in terms of where I implement it, in terms of look, feel, brand, business, logistics, operations, I just try to find solutions. So my background is really in brand, but it's really stretched from there to consulting businesses and, using creative thoughts and processes to find solutions for complex problems that, some brains don't, can't find at the moment and they just need someone who thinks outside the box. So most of my day-to-day work is in, branding, style, look, marketing, all that kind of stuff. But I really like sinking my teeth into, kind of the nuances of where creativity can really thrive and help businesses thrive as well.
That's awesome. And so I know that your agency kind of focuses on designing brand ecosystems that influence growth over time, right? And so how do you ensure that these ecosystems like remain adaptable and relevant as these industries and consumer behaviors start to evolve?
Yeah, I think it starts with a good foundation first and foremost of, solid grounding and storytelling of the intent of whatever the business or your project or movement is, right? If it has a good baseline of purpose and product offering or service offering, then you just build around it with, quality things that tell the story that you really spark the inspiration for it at the start. So, from there, as you start to develop kind of the story of it, the look and feel, and start to kind of wrap this full, what I call the ecosystem into a box. You like to leave the tape off the box so it can evolve with the business. This is something where, everyone says every 5 to 10 years, brands should be rebranded. I challenge that thought. I like the thought. Obviously I love to rebrand for people, but I also like to challenge myself in building for people so that they can adapt the brand and not have to rebrand. Because, A, it's expensive. B, it's kind of tearing a piece of your heart out when you change it. People fall in love with their brand and so do your customers. And so it's allowing to design for flexibility. It's allowing to design for efficiency. So there's a bunch of different ways that I tackle it, and whether it's operations wise or look and feel or market fit, and fitting within a new app structure, a new marketing, application. It's all needs to be flexible, which means you have to kind of like create guidelines that work within the realm of like stretch, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even the way that you communicate brand changes over time, like even what we're seeing with Gen Z lately, right? They're like social causes and that type of stuff. So how do you adapt your brand to compete with that? Even how do you make your brand into almost a person like we see with like Wendy's or all these people that comment on TikTok or all these brands that now are like kind of doing that one-to-one marketing?
Yeah, to me, that's the trick, right? Everyone thinks of brand as like, oh, it's my logo. And like, I've got my color, my typography, my logo. I got a brand. But no, my simple response is no, you don't. Like your brand is everything. And, while marketing professionals hate hearing that, brand is all encompassing while marketing kind of pushes the brand forward, brand kind of decides every which move you should be taking because it influences who you speak to, how you speak to them, and how they feel with the overall customer experience. And, you can dictate every which way of that just depending on how you want to press your thumb on certain aspects and the way you speak and the tone in which you deliver. So, I think your point to, speaking to Gen Z, a lot of companies we see these days are, bringing a lot of kind of energy and character to their brand that used to be super, buttoned up in corporate because Gen Z is different, right? In the workforce, online, it's just a different mentality. And so you have to resonate with them as kind of like cultures and demographics kind of phase out of your product need. You got to fit and get in line with the people who are up next.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think, you're right. I mean, everything was so corporate before, and brand wasn't really a thing. It seems like, 20, 30, 40 years ago, and now it's become the thing, right? It's like, what does your brand say?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. And it really depends on the market, in my opinion. There's some industries where, that corporate world really makes a lot of sense. But there's one where it's everyday, customer use, where if you can add some flair, you're going to get more attention and you're going to be more memorable every single day. And the more you can build on that, the more you're a mainstay in people's brains that, keep coming back.
Yeah. And I know that you spent a decade helping businesses grow through brand and design. But what inspired you to expand your approach to like a wider variety of industries, and how do you adapt your process to meet the unique needs of each sector?
It's an interesting question. I think the fact that I do think so broad in terms of creativity alone, just on how I apply it, not just within look and feel, but it's also just solutions, also has me stretch my mind in like who I can help. I don't ever want to pigeonhole myself into one sole thing. And throughout that decade of work, I've found myself kind of, inching back into corners because people see something and they are building something similar and they want to kind of chase what I had done previously, which I love. It makes a lot of sense. But it's my way of, saying, okay, let's keep the tools sharp. Let's keep learning and let's widen this array in my portfolio of things I can create, because creativity really doesn't matter what the application is. It's all about thinking outside the box and being original. And, you can have, say, supplements, and you can have it be protein and creatine, or you can have it be, women's daily health. They're super different in style, super different demographics, but you have to speak to them in ways that work, and still look super different. So it's all, to me, kind of like a challenge to find a new lane and try new styles and, kind of see what works. It's kind of that whole idea of like throwing pasta at the wall and see what sticks. I hate to kind of dumb it down like that, but to an extent, it's like that's what creativity is. It's getting your thoughts out and crossing off the things that just don't make sense until you find it.
We've talked about creativity a lot, and it seems like you're a natural creative. Do you have something where you get into like something that you do where you get into a creative flow, or is it just this thing that's just natural for you? You could just immediately, your juices start flowing when you see something.
Yeah, I love that question. I get asked that a lot. I think previously, like for earlier in my career, I had those kind of mainstay items that I needed to really find it. Those early 20s, you're fun and you're vibrant and you're alive, and like you just have so many thoughts. You're out there in the world, you see things and you're inspired. And so I was using a lot of music and, inspirations from people who have done it before. Nowadays, I really lean into what I've done and where I come from. I have a lineage of creative in my bloodline, that I just try to chase as much as I can, but I'm really inspired by, some creators that don't align with what I do, but they're really creative in their own right. And, one of those is Mac Miller. Yeah, I've got posters that I make personally, like custom for, a different side project that I run that's really fun. Those, yeah, I've always had him in my office, just hanging. Actually, him, Kobe Bryant, and Virgil Abloh. Those are the three characters. I call them characters. They're people, but to me, they're characters because they're so much bigger than just their names. And it's what they've influenced, it's what they've done, and each one has played a different part of influence in my own life. Mac Miller is creative and clever, and he comes from a genre of music that you wouldn't normally see a guy like him, and he treated it with a fun and flair and added his own style that made him so unique and nuanced that he became so popular and loved that people, rest in peace, but still love him to this day and play his music all the time. So there's that, and then Kobe Bryant, I grew up a basketball fan, and just the way he was creative with his way he played basketball, it's just fun ways to look at things like that. It's like, he wasn't really the biggest guy. He wasn't the fastest guy, but he had to get creative with the way he did it to be able to be as great as he was. And that's something I used to like to think of every single day is like, you might not be the best, you might not know the most, but how do you get the best out of yourself every single day? So that's who reminds me of that. And lastly, Virgil Abloh, again, as you notice, all of these are deceased, great icons in the world that I think of every single day. But Virgil's another one of those where he kind of was a trailblazer in what he did, creating Off-White and then becoming the creative director of Louis Vuitton. He was the first African-American creative director in, luxury fashion. And he really he went against the grain. He just thought differently, and he took risks that nobody else ever seemed to make or take. And I fell in love with that idea. Just try and do. And your creativity is just like everyone else's, which is subjective. So no one can tell you you're wrong except for your KPIs at the end, and let the numbers do the talking. Until then, let's have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I love all three of those people. I've studied them and their process. It's really interesting how there's this like gone too soon aspect to trailblazers lots of times. It's a really unique phenomenon,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Think of Steve Jobs. He's another one of those that, his famous quote of, it's one of my favorite quotes of, here's to the square pegs in the round holes, the misfits, basically the game changers that are there because they think differently and you can't change them. You can only quote them and things like that. So it's people like that. You're right. Like, they're an enigmatic character that just like is so polarizing, and it's just sad to see them go so fast.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so I know that you mentioned off camera, but that you love working with brands that tell a strong story, especially those related to daily use products. How do you approach designing for these brands in a way that turns a great story into something that actually drives long-term growth?
That's a tough one. In my personal wishes at every single brand project, I love to get my hands dirty in the story, help develop it, help shape it. If it's already shaped, how do we optimize it to tell a better story that resonates deeper? And if it's there and it's cooked and it's ready, it's really just taking it and shouting it with a megaphone and not slapping people in the face with it, but it's saying it over and over and over in so many different ways so that who you're speaking to can see it and resonate with it. Because at the end of the day, right, this world is made up of a bunch of pockets of people. We're all different, but all those pockets have similarities and that people dive into buckets.
Yeah.
If we look at one bucket and speak to it and just find our niche of people who love how we speak, how we feel, and what we deliver, I mean, it's a honeypot of possibilities, whether it's for business, whether it's for communities, whether it's for friendships, all those things. And so you're really just trying to dive into a story that makes sense, that's, different enough to kind of take you away from what everyone else is doing to stand out. And then you just press your thumb on that, like I always like to say, and just kind of turn the faucet on.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know that, you're passionate about challenging the common misconceptions around branding. But what are some of the biggest myths that you encounter about what brand truly is? And how do you help clients, move past those misconceptions to build something lasting?
Like I said previously with brand, it's really seen as just a look thing for most people that don't really understand and think about like the customer, right? When a lot of businesses, they look at the customer as, important, but they really think about their business and they're like, hey, this is my baby.
Yeah.
Your baby should be your customer, in my opinion. And because they define what your brand is at the end of the day, because what brand turns out to be when you're really looking at it, and when you zoom out and look at it, it's the overall experience that someone feels, right? When I look at Apple, their brand to me is different than it is to you because my experience is different with you, right? To an Android user that looks at Apple, their brand is just clean, simple. It's cocky, arrogant, overpriced. Apple to me as an avid user it's clean, it's detailed, it's researched, backed, and ready for the next, thing to take over. And so it's like everyone defines it differently, but it's Apple that defines how you see it to get you to where you want to be. And so while it starts with look and feel and story and things like that, it goes so far to how you speak to people on your support chat or your chatbot on your website, how your click-through path to your checkout process and the return emails you get when you have a confirmation email, all the way down to when a product is delivered to your doorstep. What's it say on the inside or what's it say on the outside? And then, when you open it, what does it say on the inside? What do you deliver and what's the care that you give around your product and the little nuances, that really go away from your overall delivery that brings value and tells them who you are without you actually like telling them.
Yeah. And I'm sure with those clients or those people that have the idea that, my brand is just my logo, when you start sharing this type of stuff with them, that it extends this far, it's hopefully it's like a revelatory thing, like it's just like mine. Well, oh yeah, wow, you're right,
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if curse words are okay on this podcast. I was about to give the exact like what it always is it good, bad, or indifferent is an oh shit moment. So I apologize for the language, but it's one of those that bleed it out if you need to. But it's that shock factor of either, wow, this is an opportunity, or wow, we're not ready for this yet.
Yeah.
And either way, it's the reality of business. It's like, if you're not ready, you should probably like what I do then if they're not ready is I educate them to how to get ready, right? Let's do baby steps to get there, because at the end of the day, you'll want to be here. Otherwise, you're missing opportunities for growth, for attachment, and a legacy, like leaving a legacy. And for the ones who it's the okay, wow, like this is bigger than I need, let's go. That's where the fun happens, because it's like,
Yeah.
all right, let's sit down, let's brainstorm, let's think of all the different ways that within your market, your niche, your demographic, how do we find the sweet spot for us to really thrive here and, make us unique?
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So, yeah, in an increasingly competitive marketplace, what do you believe are the most important elements of brand design that resonate with modern consumers? And how do you ensure these elements are part of every customer journey that you craft?
Yes. To me, it really depends on what the business type is, right? And where your market fit is. Say you're in e-com, right? You have a product you're selling and, you got distributors, things like that. The important part there for me is what your product looks, feels, and the quality of the product, right? At the end of the day, you're selling something that someone can tangibly hold, feel, and use their own senses past, a computer screen. So when they get it, what does it look like? What does it feel like? And what's the quality of that product? Like, not only like say it's a ingestible, say it's like, here's a good product example, creatine gummies, right? It's a kind of a new fun thing, new way to do creatine, good opportunity for brands to really scale because it's exciting. How does it taste? What's the efficacy? What's the ingredients that are going into it? That's A1 kind of like the best way to start for your brand is the quality of your product. But then it's, okay, well, what's that product wrapped in? What's the jar like? What's it feel like? How exclusive is it? How different is it? What's the shape? How does it look on a shelf? And then from there it goes to packaging, not just the jar, but how's it shipped? And then, so it's like, it depends. Like that's an e-com example. If it's say, kind of like a service business, like a local company, it's, what is your call support? Like if someone has a question and they want to send a form on your website, what's that process like? What's your return time to getting them a response? What's your tone that you give them? Are you the small mom and pop shop that just wants people to feel like they're cared for? All right, let's hone in on that, because your market's not as big. So we need to focus small and make sure that word of mouth is going to be really good. And where do you get that is connection. So it really depends, like I said, on the application of the business itself. And, it really, I don't think there's a huge rule for it. I think it just depends on where you want to be and who you want your brand to resonate with. And that kind of defines what's most important. I think the only thing that is kind of a locked in gate and key, like, yes, this has to happen, is when product is in place. That's when it's like quality of product, packaging, these days.
I like the way that you approach that because it's almost this like inside out thing, or at least that's the way I picture it in my mind. Like, let's start with what's in the packaging and then work out and out and out and out,
Right.
I think it's a really cool way to organize your mind around what brand is and organize clients' minds around what brand is, which is really, and, as you're focused on creating impactful brand ecosystems, how do you see collaboration with other specialized agencies or partners as part of scaling these ecosystems across like a larger variety of services or industries?
Well, in the modern world, like we have so many opportunities for connection that were never really a possibility. We've got affiliate programs that we can utilize now. We've got white label services that are being possible for agencies to expand into sectors of service that they might not have in-house, right? And that's a lot of actually what I do is I team up with agencies who might be an SEO agency or, a marketing agency that does all of your, social media campaigns or your customer journey and customer life cycles. And I consult and I create and produce for those companies. And then all of a sudden they deliver, hey, we do this now.
Yeah.
I'm kind of that white label service behind the curtain that they come to me and say, hey, here's my client. Some of those, they push the client to me and we have great conversations. Some of them, like to keep me behind the curtain for sake of just business and the way it's built. But, as far as like scaling and being able to grow, there's so many opportunities to, join with people who are like minds or even not like minds, right? Like you see Crocs teaming up with crazy like brand collabs like Post Malone, where he's making his own Croc shoe. And so it's things like that where, you just have to get creative and try to, take what's in your bucket. Like I was talking about earlier of like the niche you found. Okay, where's some other buckets that we might not fit, but still kind of align? Let's see if we can go join with someone in there that has a lot of trust built. And then we can get a lot of people in that network to go, I've never heard of them. Let's check them out. So then you all of a sudden kind of build this ecosystem of like options and ways you can go about things. And, it does require a lot of brand flexibility. And that's why I always say like, keep the tape like off the box so that you can open up that door and kind of think about like, okay, we're stepping over here. We got to rethink this a little bit and how we address either our tone or style and just kind of go outside of the box and guidelines of what we originally created. So it's really fun when like you have opportunities to do it. It's challenging, but it's one of those challenges that I just like, I live for.
Right. That's awesome. And I know, your focus on creativity and storytelling, it suggests like a deep engagement with the client's narrative, kind of like what we've talked about. How do you balance that creativity with the practical aspects of driving business growth, especially when designing like brand ecosystems for long-term impact?
Well, I think it all chalks up to how set on your core values are you, right? Like, cause I think your mission, vision, and values really drive who you are and where you're going to go and how much you're willing to hone in on those keeps you locked in on your path. I see oftentimes where people start with this grandiose idea of like, here's who we want to be. And then, out the gates, whether it's a startup and it didn't go exactly the way they wanted, or it's shifted because if that's where the market fit needed to be and it just didn't align and they got kind of like lost in the shuffle, that it's hard. So like you're trying to kind of resonate with people who align with your mission, vision, values and speak to that tone, because at the end of the day, it's like, that's how you can capture through that storytelling and like being real and authentic. That's what wins these days. There's a million brands in this world. Why should I buy your stuff? And it's because something spoke to me, whether it was like a little label tag on the sleeve of the shirt that Dave, a symbol that I remembered from my childhood that I'm like, ding, that's it. It's like, it's those little things that you'll catch people in certain ways if you're thinking outside the box that if you're not, your competitor is, and they're going to win every single day. So it's how much you're willing to kind of sink your teeth in, how much you're willing to go back to the drawing board and think of new things. And how much you're willing to continue telling a story that just shows the real rawness of who you are, where you came from, and what you want to be.
Yeah.
There's an example for you. I used to be a creative director for a supplement company here in Boise, Idaho, who was real small when I came on, and they were led by a culture that was just inspiring. And it was one of those things where people came in for an interview or, just even a side task where we had to just bring a contractor in to help us in the office. And they were just like, man, I just want to hang out here. It's like, everybody's so happy. Everybody wants to say hi and chat and just have a good time and love what we're doing. And it was so passion driven that like it gravitated people towards us and it grew really fast. And in 2 years time, they had success that was just nobody could predict. And so I really attest it to, yes, a great team of people who knew what they were doing and had a lot of knowledge and customers that just liked the product, but it was also just the energy that it brought people. It just had them coming back and telling stories and pushing our narrative for us
Yeah.
that did more marketing than we could have ever asked for, that wasn't pay-per-click ads and money spent. They spent so much time and energy marketing for us that it just built us faster than we ever imagined.
That's awesome. That's awesome. As you talk, you can really hear just this holistic approach to brand. And obviously it sounds like your creative process is super interesting. This has been awesome. Where can people find out more about you, Brennan, or your agency?
Yeah, so I can be found at doodle.xyz. It's DOODL.xyz, no E there. And so that's where I live. I mean, on socials, it's doodle.xyz, basically anywhere, spelled the same way, whether it's Twitter, Instagram. But yeah, I mean, come find me online, come chat with me if you got questions. I'd love talking brand. I love connecting with people because that's where this all starts and that's where it keeps going. And that's what keeps me alive. So, I try to chat with people as much as I can, help out where I can, and will sink my teeth in whenever I'm asked.
That's great. Well, Brennan, this has been awesome. Thanks for,
Yeah, no, I thank you so much. It's been a fun time. Good chatting with you and hope to do it again sometime.
yeah, for sure. All right. See ya.
Bye.